Good morning, Raphael. Thank you very much for joining us today at India M2M and IoT Forum. It is an honor for us to have you join us as our esteemed speaker. May I request you to please briefly introduce yourself to our audience?
Okay, certainly. So I come here as co-chair of MQTT Standard, but I never intended to get into standards. It was by accident. So I ran a startup company that made message queuing software, and we wanted to grow. And we got involved in standardization to protect the company's interests. And from that, I discovered I got a bit of a knack for it. And so my background now is one of real application experience and trying to use that to build standards that work for people in the real world. So I run the standards body with the intention that we do not produce standards that are theoretical or serve the vendor, but serve the customer, serve the people who need to use them. Standards that aren't too pure, because if they're too pure, people can't apply them, they don't understand them. So standards that work for the average developer, the average startup. We don't know as a standards group who's going to use our standard. We can't predict it. So what we want to do is create it as an open way as possible, that people contribute what they know, what they think works, and then we just codify the practices. Great standards evolve out of real things. Bad standards are designed by a group of architects in a room smoking cigarettes.
A lot is being said and done about M2M and IoT space, especially with regards to the potential it holds for the Indian market. What is your take on it, and what do you think the industry has in store for the future?
I'll tell you a little bit. Oasis is a standards body. It's a non-profit organisation. Oasis's purpose is to enable companies to come together to produce standards that are for free consumption. So Oasis's big goal is to make sure standards are not proprietary in some way, that you don't have to pay a fee to understand the standard, and the technology itself that sits behind the standard is freely available. There's no license restriction of any sort beyond reasonable usage. Oasis is a very simple structure. It has a very small commissariat, I suppose is the right word, that runs it, over maybe less than 10 people. It's very lean, and it charges different fee structures for its member companies depending on their ability to pay effectively. So for an individual, it's less than $300 a year. For a startup, it might be $3,000 US dollars a year. And then if you're the likes of IBM, they'll be charged, say, $49,000. But despite what you pay, you get no greater voting rights and no greater influence. It's entirely really a meritocracy. Those that contribute most to the standards are the ones who get to vote on them. And so we tend to produce standards that suit the interests of the member companies. And in the main, the member companies tend to actually be people who aren't vendors, but are customers. So in our standards group, there are many people who are implementers of our standard because they have an interest in making sure it's the very best thing available, that it serves their interests. So it's slightly defensive, but it's actually mostly positive, and that's a very good thing. That differentiates it particularly from other organisations like the IETF.
You are here today at India M2M and IoT Forum 2015.
I think we're already going. We're set and we're on the march. Today at this conference, I have seen 3 Indian companies already applying good standards such as MQT to their product and having real customer use and making money out of them. I think India's all set. I think there's some big challenges though. I think firstly, we need to get the government out of the way. India has fantastic talent, and we need to let those startups flourish. And what holds that back is bureaucracy and regulation, because that serves the interests of big business. It serves the big groups, like the Mahindras and the Tatas of this world. And whilst they can do good things at scale, they don't know what's right because they make their money out of working the system. Whereas what's going to really happen in M2M are those who have the innovative ideas, and they're not going to be people who just take other people's products and bring it to India. And I think that's the great challenge. India is at a crossroads now. In the past, when technologies have arrived, India has brought them in, and then the money has flowed out of the country, the jobs that have been created have been low value, and they've ended up in a race to the bottom for cheap labour. There's been talk about doing Make in India. I think it should be make software in India. Make in India, making sensors, making little circuit boards, that's nice, but the Chinese do it. The Chinese are good copycats, they'll always do it cheaper, they'll always have cheap labour. Let them take the low value chain and the race to the bottom. Let India flourish and grow by taking that wonderful natural talent pool that's here. I mean, at Kissen Hub, we've been incredibly impressed at the sorts of people we can hire and the talent sets available. The ability for people to learn and learn fast is unprecedented, I think, in India.
What do you think about the entire platform, and how important do you think platforms like these are for the industry?
I think certainly it's important. I think having the panel conversations is the best way to do it. I think speeches don't tend to work. People tend to switch off. You occasionally get a good speaker, and we've had 2 or 3 extremely good speakers, but the panels give great interactivity. In fact, if anything, I would ask that more time is given to the panel conversations. There's a little less formality perhaps would help, because then we just have a good conversation, and there's definitely some characters who've been in the audience who are capable of doing that and driving some fantastic conversations.
Thank you very much, Raphael, for sharing your views with us, and we look forward to working with you very closely and to receiving you once again in 2016.